Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective, here with a fellow Texas football fan who is actually, right now as we speak, behind enemy lines. Mr. Sark, very, very popular on Twitter and also a writer over at hook'emheadlines.com, as well as pursuing a PhD in philosophy and master's in neuroscience. Super talented guy over in College Station at Texas A&M. Tark, welcome to the channel, brother.
Thank you, Steven. It's a pleasure to be here.
Man, so you're over there in College Station. We'll get to that in a second with all the news bearing down. And it's crazy, as we were preparing and chatting on social media and then started, getting to know each other privately, Quinn Ewers story breaks. The Bob Bowlesby story breaks, and we're over here like just trying to figure, we're ready to talk Texas OU to the SEC, but just this historical time, this historical landscape that we're in. You see the Quinn Ewers news today. I know you personally were a huge fan and advocate for the recruitment of Quinn Ewers. So just your reaction to that news about him possibly leaving early his senior year of high school to go and enroll at Ohio State over the NIL rules.
Yes, I am the unofficial president of the Quinn Ewers fan club, so you're right on there. I was blindsided, as I'm sure everyone else was. I was expecting Ewers to come back, go back to South Lake Carroll, and finish off what he started last year. Very obviously, South Lake Carroll was blown up by Westlake there, but they still have a very good team, so you have another chance to make another run at it. Then he goes to Ohio State. It's I think that if I were him, I would take the money and go.
Sure.
You have nothing. He's already proved all he can at the high school level. We all know he's the best player in the country. So now he can go to Ohio State. He can compete for the starting job right now because that job is open. I would be I will say, now I'm president of the fan club, but I am a realist. I would be pretty shocked if Ewers won the job in fall. That seems a little quick when you have Stroud there, who was a 5-star, McCord there, who was a 5-star. So he probably wouldn't win the job, but he would certainly be allowed to compete, get his feet wet, and make some money while you're at it. I know that, and I understand the sentiment that some people think, well, why not stay your senior year of high school, go to prom, have all those memories. And I get that to a certain point, but when you're a guy like Ewers, when your goal is ultimately to be the #1 pick in the draft, you need to get to college as soon as you can, get into that training and weight conditioning, start learning the offense, start bonding with your teammates, and start getting ready to play so that you can play on Sunday. And think of it this way too, since you and I probably both agree he will be a high pick in the draft. If he goes now, that's an extra year on his body that he can play in the NFL rather than somewhere else. So
Great.
I think it makes all the sense for him to go. And I wish him the best. I wish he was coming to the 40 acres, but now all eyes are on Arch Manning. So Sark, make that happen.
So in regards to just my thoughts there, I've been doing a poll the last 24 hours for those of you who follow me on Instagram, just people asking questions. And somebody asked me today about, and I guess it was either before the news had come out or right when the news came out, somebody asked me about, hey, do you think the Texas going to the SEC would give us some sort of in back into Quinn Ewers recruitment? And I'm like, well, the ship has sailed with the news coming out, obviously. And it's tough, right? It's tough. And it's just another one gone. Another one bites the dust. We've talked on this channel about the Brockermeyers. We've talked about Jaden Waddle and all these guys that are Texas guys. I know.
Sorry,
that's why
the Waddle one always stabs me in the heart a little bit. Sorry. I loved him in high school, loved him in college. It's such a tragedy he didn't come to Texas.
So these guys that are out here, if Texas can start winning now, because we will get to expectations and what this all means, but Quinn Ewers going, you still have Malik Murphy in the class of 2022. We'll see what happens with Arch Manning. I expect him right now, with this whole new president, you never know. Arch Manning could reclassify and say, hey, I'm going to take some extra classes, boom, and reclassify to 2022. I think that might be the move. Potentially. We're just, this is all speculative, right? But when you look at what the stable is with the quarterback position and just overall recruiting in general, what does this move to the SEC mean for Texas as we transition to our conversation with Texas and OU reportedly going to the SEC?
Well, it certainly gives them a recruiting pitch of you're going to come and play in the best conference in college football, where it's interesting. So I think we could all say most college football fans would agree it's the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and then the Big 12, and then the Pac-12. Some years it'll fluctuate here and there, but that's basically the idea. So Texas needed to do something. As far as, so the question was, how does it affect recruiting?
Absolutely. How does it? Yeah.
I think, well, two things to that. One, it's another chip on the table saying, look, you'll play against the best. NFL scouts will be almost at every game. You will be seen. You're not going to be forgotten. So that's a huge thing. Look at what happened to A&M. A&M was never recruiting the way that they are now. And Texas has already recruited well, so that's another chip in the arsenal. I also think that Sark is positioned well to succeed in the SEC because most of his coaching staff, at least on the offensive, defensive side, they've all coached there. They know what it takes to get there. So Texas is going to have the ball rolling on that front. I don't know if Texas were to go to the SEC, let's say they went this year, I don't think they're better than Alabama, who is, let's face it. Certainly not Ohio State after that performance. They're not better than Georgia. I'd put them behind LSU. I'm not going to. I think Texas and Texas A&M are a lot closer than people think. I think the A&M gets that SEC bump, but my wife is a Texas A&M fan, and I'm a Texas A&M student, so I watch every Texas A&M game. And I must say that while they were a good team last year, they weren't running people off the field. So and a few of those games, it could have gone either way up until the end. And they just got the breaks that they needed. Texas didn't, obviously. So they would be like around in that 4, 5, 6, but they would be in the second tier, whether they be in the higher end or the lower end. So that's where they would be. Jimbo Fisher has not developed a quarterback since Jameis Winston, and it shows. So I don't know, and that's going to be the thing that's going to decide how far A&M is going to go. You can't just run the ball in the SEC. There's enough defenses to stop the run, so you're going to have to throw it. So we'll see what he does there, but obviously a very good coach. So he's there. Florida with Mullen, I think, is still a good team. So they'd be in that kind of area.
Let me chime in here real quick because I think from a Texas standpoint, I would have A&M. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They did go 9-1 with the SEC schedule during 2020, all the chaos going on. Did have a top 5 finish. They're returning a lot of those guys on the offensive line. I really like their defensive line. I'm big on defensive lines. My thing with Texas A&M though is the same point you hit on. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt over Texas because we're both in a quarterback battle right now. But where I get where I'm with you on this is developing the quarterback. At some point, the quarterback's going to have to carry the bag in a game or win you something, especially if you want to beat Alabama. That's one of the reasons why A&M has not even been competitive in their games against Alabama recently, or competitive when LSU was really, really good. So they have.
Here's a thought too. A&M has done better against Alabama when Sumlin was there. Even when the games they lost, the games were closer. They've just been all blowouts since Jimbo's been there.
So they have to get I think you're right. I think it factors around the quarterback is solid and steady as Kellen Mond was for them. That was what he was going to be. And I think he never became the guy that I think they thought they saw in that Clemson game a few years ago where he was like 400 yards and do all over the place. And
we never saw that Mond again.
No. And a lot of people feel the same way about Sam Ehlinger versus LSU, right? When he threw for 400 yards. The similarities between those two guys, it's very, very interesting.
Number 11 must be a curse. I don't know.
But with Texas and OU heading over to the SEC, what's it been like in your neck of the woods? You're in College Station. like I understand them, my buddy Brandon, who was on the live chat. Thank you for everybody tuning into the live chat yesterday. My buddy Brandon, who's an Aggie as well. He's like, I'm not scared of Texas. I just didn't want to lose my recruiting advantage. But I felt more it was more than that with their administration, Ross Bjork, and all these Texas A&M fans and the people that are running these fan sites. What's your take there, just in terms of their general reaction to this news?
Well, the first thing when I saw the news, one of my best friends is a professor at A&M and the head of the accounting department and a huge A&M fan. And I texted him. I said, "Hey, looks like Texas and Oklahoma are going to come to the SEC." And he sends back a text, "No," with like a million exclamation points. He's like, "Texas does not belong in this conference. This is A&M." He's like, "We're the only team that's supposed to." I was like, I almost thought, like, were you talking to Ross Bjork like an hour ago or something? But I was the one who told him, so he didn't even know about the media day thing. And then it's kind of been the same thing. Lots of Texas A&M fans are feeling a bit jaded and hurt because, let's face it, the only thing Texas A&M had on Texas, they're not better in academics, they're not better in any other sport, is that they were in the best conference. So now that Texas is coming into that conference, they know that they're going to lose their recruiting a lot. It's going to be, I mean, not a lot. They're still going to get some good players there as long as Jimbo Fisher's there.
I agree.
As long as they're in the SEC. But now it's like, if you were thinking, well, I wasn't going to go to Texas because they're not in the SEC. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Now we're going to have to do a reevaluation here. Now, it remains to be seen how that will all work out, because I do think, as far as recruiting, Sark is going to have to prove it on the field this year to reel in some of those top recruits. So, but yeah, it's certainly a different ball game. They are not happy about this. Let's face it. Was any other school calling a board of regents meeting to talk about whether we should let another school into a league? Alabama wasn't doing that. Auburn wasn't doing it. Tennessee wasn't doing it. Only A&M was doing that. So please don't talk about we're not scared. Yes, you are. Just admit it. It's not that big of a deal. You'll always be little brother. Trust me, in the Lone Star Showdown, we'll take it easy on you. Like, that's going to happen. Okay, moving on.
I love it.
But think of it this way. I don't know. Are you a Cowboys fan?
I am a Cowboys fan.
Right. So now we have that game, where the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving, and the Texas and Texas A&M game coming back. So now Thanksgiving's just going to be a lot of great things, and then a great meal afterwards. Well, depending on.
It's fantastic to me to watch how people react to situations, and when people, the way that other fans in the SEC reacted was, all right, come through, y'all gonna get your ass whooped, but welcome to the conference. That was their energy. Right. And that would have been my energy if I was one of those schools, right? And so if you're a true SEC program, right, and you have that armor that they wear, and you promote the conference the way that they do, Texas A&M being 10 years in, having all of that, whatever they built up, even though they haven't won much of anything, much more than even us, shout out to them. Top 5 finish last year, 9-1, all SEC. We've heard it. But the moment this comes up, they hang on to that banner of, well, we don't want to lose the in-state advantage, and lose sight of that was your opportunity to show that your mentality as a school, as a program, has changed. And I really would have commended them if they had came out from jump, like some of the players did. A lot of their players did, and said, bring it. We want to play Texas. We want them in the conference. We want to be reconnected and have that rivalry back up. Then they wouldn't be getting trolled like they are right now and getting dunked on social media. That's just the reality of the situation.
I think that there are some fans who are still not exactly sure where A&M is as a program, because even though you had that good season, I think people realized, okay, there were so many games that were 50-50 that they don't know, like, okay, we might actually take a step back this year, and they probably still know that they're not going to beat Alabama, so they're still probably not going to be at the SEC championship game. So again, it's going to you're gonna always like hoping you just lose that game and you sneak in rather than thinking you can win the league outright. And then Texas coming in, you're going to lose some of your recruiting, and also that the coach that Texas has, regardless of anything else, his quarterbacks are going to be good. So that doesn't bode well if you don't feel the same way about your own coach at the moment. And then there's also the last thing of, okay, if Texas A&M has a bad season, does Jimbo Fisher, and LSU has a bad season, does Jimbo Fisher look at that LSU job again if it comes open? Because remember, he has no buyout. He can just walk away. So
That's
they're worried about that. So they're probably worried about that too. There's a lot to worry about where Texas is like, well, we've been mediocre for a while. We're going to the SEC. We'll probably get some more better recruits, maybe especially on the defensive line. Probably a better quarterback play, but it's going to take us a little time. But let's do this thing. So that's the difference, as I said on Twitter, between a blue blood and a non-blue blood. A blue blood just says, we'll play with anybody. We don't care. That's what Oklahoma's doing. That's what Texas is doing. Think of it this way. I don't think if Texas A&M said, you know what, we want to go back to the Big 12, I don't think Texas would have done anything like what Texas A&M did. They wouldn't be saying, this is our league, you can't come back. No, come back by all means.
Love to play you.
That's the difference.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm glad we're staying connected with OU. I want the opportunity to that's who I've really been chasing, and that's the team that has been been carrying the bag on the field for the Big 12, and why we're ending up in the situation we're at now. This
may upset some of your viewers, but I do believe this. If we were in 2021, I think Oklahoma would be the second best team in the SEC.
I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. I mean, there's a lot of people that have OU ranked number 1 in the country right now.
Right,
but that's
who has more from questions? An SEC thing, but
it is an SEC thing. But who has more questions right now before the season starts, OU or Alabama, in terms of where we're putting people and penciling in guys? OU's depth chart is set for the most part, right? Like they're loaded. Alabama's loaded, of course, and they're going to get the Nick Saban benefit of the doubt pass, but we have half their coaching staff now here at Texas. They're breaking in a new quarterback. They're bringing in a new running back. They're bringing in all the receivers. There's a lot they're going to have to break in.
New offensive coordinator.
Bill O'Brien being there. And I think, Bill O'Brien's going to have success in the Nick Saban rehabilitation program, but we still got to see it, right? So
that needs to get trademarked, by the way. There needs to be shirts that, where they wear it like one game a year. I'm here for rehab or something.
I'm here for rehab because once I get with Nick, I'm right. And so I have no doubt Alabama's going to roll and be dominant and probably compete and play for SEC in the SEC championship game. No doubt about it. But the point is, OU's been building for this year for a long time, since Alex Grinch, since they made all these moves, drastic moves. They've been building for 2021. The way they attacked the transfer portal, aggressive as hell, taking guys from Mississippi State, taking guys from Tennessee, all over the place. This is the team that they're feeling like is our best team we've had in the Big 12, probably since 2017, the Baker Mayfield, CeeDee Lamb team. And this is the best team we have defensively since the Stoops era. No doubt about it. So there's no excuses for OU this particular season. I'm telling my OU boys, the pressure's on you guys, not just to win the conference, but to do something, make some noise in the playoffs and win a playoff game. So we'll see what they do there. For us, though, we made a coaching change, and this is why I'm excited to talk with you about too. We made a coaching change. Steve Sarkisian, you've been writing about it on hook'emheadlines.com. Please, guys, go check out Tark's work. He does a great job, just kind of more thought pieces on the team, big picture. But you wrote your last article probably about a month ago now, and I know a lot has changed since then, brother, but the expectation factor for year one. You said Steve Sarkisian should win now. And for the folks out here, I agree with Tarks. I told you, if you're going to come to Texas, you have to have success off the bat. But please, elaborate on some of the points you hit on and about why we need that success early. And now you're factoring in the pressure of the SEC on top of it.
Well, the first reason is because you have enough talent on your roster to be successful. Last year, Texas was 13 points away from going undefeated. So you weren't that far away. Now you are there is some distance, I think, between Oklahoma and Texas, though that tends not to matter in the Red River rivalry. That game just never makes any sense, and that's what I love about it. But so we'll put that one to the side. But everyone else, you have more talent, and you now have a better coaching staff, so you should be able to win those games and not make those mistakes that Tom Herman and his staff made. That's one. Also, you have to send a message to recruits and just people watching. So ever since the Mac Brown era has ended, you've had Charlie Strong fail, you've had Tom Herman fail, and Tom Herman came in with more head coaching winning than Sark has. Sark has never won 10 games. So lots of people are already, if you're wondering why is Sark struggling a little on the recruiting trail, and I say the word struggling in hash marks because we have the number 10th ranked class right now, it's because people are negatively recruiting him, saying, look, he's not going to win as a head coach because he hasn't done it and as much in two different stops. So he needs to show people, no, I've learned from Saban, I can do this job. So you win 10 games, you've done something in the regular season, you've done something Tom Herman didn't do in 4 years, something Charlie Strong never did, never had a winning season. Let's not open up that wound. So
yeah.
So those are things. And as I pointed out in the article, as far as talent-wise, Texas is behind Alabama and Georgia, but they're right in there in the same kind of group with LSU and all those other things. And you're in a conference where the only people like that were in that group that I was talking about is Oklahoma. The Big 12 is not a good league. It's not. Sorry.
That's why we're in the drama we're in. No,
yes,
you don't have
exactly.
to apologize. That's why we're here. That's why people are sending out cease and desist letters to ESPN.
Exactly. Exactly. The Big 12 is not a good league in football. Yes, Iowa State has done pretty well, but let's face it, also Texas should have won the last 2 games against Iowa State. And that was their and I think Matt Campbell is a very good coach, but Texas should be able to beat Iowa State. They should be able to beat TCU if you have competent coaching. So this is the time to win now. And now you add to the SEC. Earlier today, Jeff Ketchum and Anwar Richardson were talking about this on their buy or sell piece. And Anwar thought, well, you might get a bad season discount because you're looking forward to the SEC. I don't think that's the case at all. If you can't win in the Big 12, why in the world should we think you're going to win in the SEC? There's just no reason to think so.
Okay, so let's pause there, because I think the number he put was because I should have qualified this better before I passed it over to you. What does win now? Let's define what win now means, because when I say win now, people are talking about, oh, I don't know if we win 8 games. Like, what is win now? Is win now to you 10-2? Is that 9-3 at a minimum? What is win now?
Win now is 10 games plus. The minimum. I think in college football, you can't say you had a bad season if you won 10 games. Now maybe it wasn't great because you maybe lost some games you should have. Sure. But 10 games, you had a good season. You're going in the right direction if you're winning 10 games. And we haven't won 10 games in the regular season since 2009. So that has to change. So, and yes, is it going to be tough going to Iowa State late in November? Yes, that's the nature of football. Guess what's going to happen when you have to go into Bryant-Denny Stadium against Saban? What's going to happen when you have to go to Death Valley and play LSU? What's going to happen when you have to go to Georgia and play them, or the Swamp? That's just the name of the game. And you're at a blue blood program. Those are the expectations. Now, it would be different if I thought the roster just wasn't there to compete, but I think it is there to compete in the Big 12. Maybe not in the SEC just yet, but certainly in the Big 12, you can win 10 games against this schedule.
You can, and let's be real. If you're looking at it right now, if you're Vegas and already know before the season starts, Texas is favored in 10 out of 12 games. The only game that Texas is not favored in is OU and at Iowa State in Ames, which
Right.
could be, depending, and there's a lot of expectations sky high for Iowa State. And we'll see. The other thing is
Iowa State's in a similar place to A&M, because now it's gone from no one really paying attention to now you're going in with expectations.
You're going from the
And
hunters
Brock
to the
Purdy is a
hunted
turnover machine, as you saw in that
in the
in the
Big
Big
12
12
championship
championship game.
Yeah. I agree. He takes a lot of risk. I like Brock Purdy's heart, but there will be opportunities for you to make a play on the football. Now it's up to you whether or not you take it away from him. I do think, though, I think that's a great point about the hunters, or the hunted versus the hunters, right? And the hunters, that entire dynamic with Iowa State. Matt Campbell, expectations. We know he can coach when the radar is not on all the way. But you look at the preseason Big 12 All Conference team, there's loaded with Iowa State players on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. No doubt about it, the expectations there. Now, I'm curious mentally with all these schools, because it's as much a psychological game as it is on the field and X's and O's and doing everything you need to do with the uncertainty and how this is impacting teams. Like, I know to your point about going to Ames and the comparison you made to going to Bryant-Denny, I totally agree with you in terms of the vitriol Texas is going to face, assuming this is their last season in the Big 12, which we kind of, I think, suspect they're going to blow this thing up after 2022 season anyway. I mean, I know people are still talking about 2025, but I think as things progress down the road, this conference is going to blow up. That's going to be the last time Texas is in Ames. Those people are going to be, it's going to be a crazy environment. I expect TCU to be crazy. Every game that OU or Texas plays on the road is going to be nuts. But that's great preparation for what you're going to step into in the SEC anyway. So I'm cool with that. But on the flip side, if I'm Iowa State, and I'm asking you this question because I've seen this from buddies of mine who I know are good people at some of these schools that were like, I was so excited for this season until this news. And I know my team, this is the most excited I was about Iowa State until this news. And now I'm like, this is it. And I'm like, are they going to be excited about their season? Or are they going to be somewhere in the back of their mind thinking, is this it? Like, I feel like there's a dynamic in play where you might see some unraveling potentially with some of these teams, not knowing their futures.
That's certainly true. Your friend is also probably worried that Jim Harbaugh won't make it after this year, that Matt Campbell will be headed to Michigan. That probably isn't helping matters either. So, yeah, I certainly think you'll have some hostile environments. That'll be good for Texas to get that feeling. It won't be quite the same as in the SEC, where every game is a championship game to them, which is, if you're a football fanatic, that's what you want. But I tend to think that most teams, I think Gary Patterson will have TCU focused, especially when they play the Texas and the Oklahoma games. They'll be focused those weeks. What they do after that, I don't know. Kansas State, they're the big wild card, because they're the one I just don't see them being in a Power Four, because I think we're going to go to 4 of 16.
Super team.
That seems like that seems like the easiest way to do it. And I don't see Kansas State going to a Power Four. I just don't.
I'm really worried about them.
Kansas, I could see going because they're really good at basketball. TCU and Baylor, I don't know, because of the religious affiliations, and so the Pac-12 wouldn't be comfortable. The Big Ten wouldn't take them. ACC would only maybe take one if they did. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But
Baylor brings basketball to the table. They are the reigning men's basketball champions, and they won, just a couple years ago. Unfortunately, we'll have to see Kim Mulkey again now that she went to LSU. I wonder if
several
she
of my
got
friends
the
were
drop.
talking about Mulkey. I actually like her.
She got the drop on what was happening, because the timing was interesting there too.
Yeah, that did shock me. Because it's weird to go to another school if you've already won national championships where you're at, like, and you have a great class coming in.
She just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, man,
right,
by Michael
exactly.
Jordan. And like, and I get she's from that area and history and all that, but I don't know. It's just interesting. It's more than a coincidence to me.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, now that I think about it, yeah, that probably does make sense, because Baylor just doesn't seem like there's going to be an easy way for them to get into a Power 4 conference, if that's even what we call them going forward. If we don't call them super conferences, I don't like the super conference label, because there's no way the Pac-12 would be considered a super conference.
Sure.
There's USC, kind of Oregon, and everybody else that's there for some reason.
So it's
the
interesting.
SEC is the super conference.
The SEC, as of right now, would be the super conference. But you and I both know, because we're around the same age, and this is something I've talked about before. League shift, team shift. When we were growing up, Clemson was not a super team the way that they are now.
If USC makes the right hire, if they get rid of Clay Helton, they can be as good as
back.
anybody. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like kids.
I don't think they'll do it, but they could.
But kids these days, I don't know if they know about the 619 Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and like how good and dominant those USC teams were.
I think a certain person that wears burnt orange and number 5 at the University of Texas.
There you go.
Remembers Reggie Bush. And I certainly do. I'm from California, so I was in high school. I remember Reggie Bush very well.
Yeah, those teams, I mean, out there, I just think that there's always an opportunity right now, just because we don't see it. And right now, Alabama's been running stuff for well over a decade. Florida's, Florida. To me, the team that really needs to make a move is Georgia, because Georgia, this is the best Georgia team. They check every box for me. I think they're going to make the playoffs. Personally, I'm super, super high on Georgia this particular year. But if Kirby doesn't get it done this year, that's to me, that's a disappointment considering what his team has. But Georgia,
if he doesn't win it now, he's not going to. I don't think.
I mean, he was
he
right
really,
there.
He really should have beaten Saban in that game that they played.
Absolutely, it went to overtime.
I was like, oh, it's like, you can ask my wife. Right after Tua got sacked, I said, he's going to throw a touchdown and they're going to win. And that's what happened.
Really?
I didn't know that was when Devonta Smith would be born, but there you go. I was like, okay.
I mean, but to in fairness to Kirby, he was that close. And I think if they win that game, that changes his whole dynamic. That puts a chink in Nick Saban's armor. You do have a assistant. I mean, that's where it goes.
I wonder what was worse for him, though. Was it losing that championship game, or was it Alabama coming back in that SEC championship game, where if they had won, they wouldn't have played Alabama at all? It would that could have been their year too. So it was 2 years in a row Alabama stops them.
Yep.
So
these teams, I mean, you never know who's going to come up and rise up and be that power. We're hoping it's Texas, because these kids haven't seen a good Texas. We're hoping that Texas can rise up and from the ashes and become, that team that is up there with the Oklahomas and the Ohio States and the Clemsons and the Alabamas, period. Like so teams can rise up and whatnot, but right now, as you're forming the conferences, yeah, it's not going to be as desirable on the West Coast, the manner in which we're seeing football being played present day. But what it looks like in 2027, 2028, people move, migration across the country, we'll see. From a quarterback perspective, I want to go back to this conversation. 2 more things I want to hit on with you. I want to hit on our quarterbacks, because I know you're in the Hudson Card camp, and the barbecue that's coming up on July 30th, the barbecue / Texas all hands on deck recruit meeting and visits. Shout out to my Robinson boys who are going to be out there. I saw y'all on Twitter. But before we get to that, I want to get to the quarterbacks. Hudson Card, Casey Thompson. You've been pretty loud on Twitter about Hudson Card's your guy for a while. Why do you have so much confidence behind that?
I think you need to look at Sark's system, what he likes. He likes to run off the RPO. And what that's predicated on is making quick decisions and getting the ball there very, very quickly. And also lots of different route trees that you need a strong arm and you need quick reads, things like that. And I think that fits Hudson Card a lot better than it does Casey Thompson, who's more of a scrambler, guy on the run kind of a player. I watched the spring game several times, and I know we can't overread into the spring game where they're not running the full offense, not running the full defense. But I kept noticing that when Card was throwing the ball, it was getting like right where it needed to be, even though he had to be on the run due to the shaky offensive line. He was making some of the more difficult throws that Casey wasn't able to. Like if you take that out route that Casey threw to Whittington, where he couldn't get it there because he threw it too late. Carter would have made
pick six.
Throw. That would have been he would have made that. Obviously, that beautiful throw where he threw the guy open, that was a great thing. But that's not what I'm going on. I just think for what Sark does, Hudson fits the mold much better than Casey does. That said, that's not to say that Casey can't be a great quarterback. We saw some great things from him in the Colorado game. But overall, and the other thing that was telling, I thought, in the spring game was that Casey's been playing quarterback a long time. He's been at Texas for a while now. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was watching that game, I said, even if you're not a fan of either quarterback, if you're just a neutral observer, Casey should be head and shoulders above Card at this point because of just how long he's been there, how he knows the players and things like that. And it wasn't. It was either even, or you could say, well, considering how well Hudson was moving the ball again with not having ever played with the starters at all, which I thought was kind of interesting. It looked like Card's the guy. So I'm going with him. I think that obviously Casey can't win the job. But what I hope that doesn't happen, and I don't think it will, is like you give a person the job because the team likes a player better, and they're more behind that player more than the player that you think can actually give you the best chance to win. Obviously, Sark knows the pressure that's on him this year. He knows the pressure that comes with the job. He'll pick the guy he thinks that gives him the best and us the best chance to win. And whether that's Card or Casey Thompson, I will be fully behind that guy when we play Louisiana on September 4th, which I'll be at that game. My first time in DKR.
I will be there as well, so we'll have to sync up and take a picture and actually get to see each other in person. I'm glad you're going to be able to make it to the game. I'm excited to be back in DKR, and just post hopefully with 100% capacity. We see COVID's going crazy right now again, but hopefully everybody there enjoying themselves and back to that feeling of normalcy with all the excitement and seeing the new regime, new coach, new quarterback, regardless of who it is. So shout out to Eric Nalin on Inside Texas. He wrote an article today breaking down the quarterback discussion, and a lot of the points that they ultimately made in favor of Hudson Card, you've echoed, right? In terms of the fit for the offense, RPO scheme, Hudson's elite passing traits, arm talent. You hear these terms thrown around all the time. This is how they evaluate the Quinn Ewers of the world, the Arch Mannings of the world, those plus throws that guys are able to make and execute. And so it says to me, hey, what is the possibilities of this offense? Now, from a Casey Thompson, I'm going to say in defense of Casey Thompson, as a Texas fan, I'm thankful for him sticking around. He held it together. We ask a lot of these players to hang with us and be loyal to the program when things aren't going their way. And looking back at it, and I'm glad Eric mentioned this in his article today, Casey probably should have gotten some playing time last year, especially when the quarterback was banged up. Other positions, when they're banged up like that, we supplement them with their backups and let the starter heal up. But for whatever reason, and we love Sam on this channel, this is not shade at Sam Ellinger, but for whatever reason, that opportunity was not afforded to Casey Thompson. And I think there was something interesting that happened in that Colorado game because it threw a wrench into this whole thing. Because that wrench, if Casey Thompson was average or what we thought he was going to be in that bowl game, this wouldn't be a question that the transition would just go to Hudson Card. But he came in and broke a UT record. And I understand that's not the offense they're running. It's a completely different offense, completely different staff. Hey, that's a game against a mediocre, probably bad Colorado team that he did that against. But it's the throws and the moxie and the energy and the juice that he played with. We had not seen that from our quarterback in a long time, from an explosiveness with his arm. And that is, again, not disrespect to Sam. We needed Sam to be Bam Bam Sam at times. We needed Sam to be, he did all those things. But Casey Thompson was taking the top off the defense. But then we hear about the same inconsistencies in practice. We hear about the things you mentioned about them being close. And typically the way I've always been the guy, if y'all are the same, let's say you're a junior and the guy's a freshman, or you're a senior and the guy's a sophomore. If y'all are practicing the same and we're even throughout, I'm gonna give it to the younger guy. I got more time with him. That just makes sense. That's just the upside play.
As well.
That's just the upside play. With that being said, there is intangibles that go into playing quarterback. There is the locker room, and it is. I understand your point about not picking the most likable person, but there is something that Steve Sarkisian did mention and was quoted on in terms of who does the team respond to. So 2-minute drill, when things are freaking out, people are blowing assignments, who can hold everything together and be that glue? Because they're going to need that early to start off with, in my opinion, to at least before they get into conference play and really, really understand who they are under Steve Sarkisian, especially since we both feel as though they need to have success right off the bat. And I think all of those things, and seeing what Casey's done, albeit limited time, but being on campus for a while, already graduated, I think that's what keeps him in this competition. I think that's why we're a lot of people are hoping that Casey can step up and do his thing like Mac Jones did at Alabama. If you had asked me a year ago if I thought Mac Jones would turn into what he turned into, I would have said hell no. Right? So these intangible things, I think, hold Casey in there. But to your point, and I think this is a question to ask, if Texas has to start another quarterback, say by conference play, we go into our first conference play and they're already changing quarterbacks, are we already off track for the season at that point? Like, I feel like whoever starts against Louisiana, we really need to see that person start for the entire season. At least that would be the hope.
That would be, it's hard to say. If you let's say you go the first 3 games and then you make the change in the 4th game, so that'd be the Tech game, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
Not
Tech.
looking at this guy. Yeah.
That's Tech. I guess you could look back and say that there have been teams in the past that have made a change at that point in the juncture of the season, and then the season went well. Thinking of the USC team that started Max Brown, I think it was 2016. Then they switched to Sam Darnold. And they went on that run that ended in the Rose Bowl.
Yep. Clemson did it as well with Kelly Bryant to Trevor.
Yeah, but they were already winning. They just finally just said, okay, they already knew versus game 1 that Lawrence was the guy, but I think Dabo just didn't want to give it to a true freshman because, let's face it, that generally doesn't happen when you're a championship team giving the reins to a true freshman.
I also think Dabo was playing the game that Steve is going to have to figure out, which is the 2 quarterback game if somebody got hurt. He didn't want Kelly to leave. Like, because if he started Trevor outright, he knew Kelly would be gone. And behind at that point, I think it was only Chase Bryce, who was also a true freshman. And I think Steve is kind of in that boat where it's like, damn, is there pressure if I don't start Casey? Hudson's there, and then I have one quarterback who's 200 pounds, and then the guy behind him is a true freshman, Charles Wright. Am I screwed there? So it's like a game they got to kind of play, but we all want to see the best guy play. So it's interesting.
I'm not sure. I think that due to the time that's going on, I don't think Casey would transfer. I think he would stay because he'll still have 2 years left to go. So I think he would stick it out for the year. You're not going to, if he doesn't win the job, he's not going to, wherever he transfers to, he's not going to win the job this year. So you're better off just sticking it out.
Mm-hmm.
Just stick it out, put some feelers out, kind of figure out what your next move is, and then go from there. I think if Card had been named the starter after the spring, then I think Casey would have left. But I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense to transfer when you have that much eligibility left, and you're not going to play. You won't play that much wherever you go anyway. So I think he would. I think he'll stay out of the way, and obviously I think Card would stay as well.
I think there's a lot of energy right now about people freaking out about the transfer thing, but now understanding that post July 1st, you can't go and roll, like you're gonna sit out regardless. You're gonna have two quarterbacks, right? And I think what Sark has to tell either guy, y'all aren't big. Neither one of you are big people. Like, I need both of you. And we're playing a
I
physical
think he
game.
subtly said that in his interview. He's like, "Well, you need two quarterbacks." And I thought about that. I was like, well, Card's gotten bigger. He looks like over the. Remember, people forget this. Card was a wide receiver for a while, so he wasn't thinking about, I need to bulk up to be this size, which makes how good of a quarterback he is already just kind of remarkable because he's been playing that long. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how big they'll end up getting, and of course, we don't know how good our offensive line is going to be, so that's something to look at. But yeah, I think we'll both see them there. From what we've been seeing from Torrey Becton and everyone else, I think their conditioning will be better than it's been before, so they'll be in good shape. Yeah, obviously, and so now Christian Jones need to just make sure that Nick Bonito stays off of them, and they'll probably be fine. But
so the last thing I'll say on the quarterback thing is I've remained consistent on my point. I do think that Casey Thompson and Hudson Card are two of your better football players on the roster, period. And I think regardless of if you have to use one or two, you're in a very good position to where guys are ready to play. And in conjunction with Steve Sarkisian and how he coaches, and I've never seen Steve Sarkisian not have good quarterback play. It's one thing I haven't seen.
He made Cody Kessler a third-round pick in the NFL draft. If he was here last year, Sam Ehlinger would have maybe been in the fourth or third round. It's that much of a difference, I think.
Absolutely.
He's a quarterback whisperer. I mean, I don't think Sam Ehlinger ever had first-round talent. I think he would probably even tell you that if you poured some Veritas serum into his coffee. But there's I think that Sark elevates quarterback play much more than Tom Herman did.
So before we bounce, there's a big barbecue coming up here in Austin. These recruits are coming in, and I give Sark and the staff credit. They've created a nice buzz on social media. Kids are excited to attend the event. We've done similar events before with Tom Herman, but we've never structured it, I don't think, in this particular manner. And honestly, getting guys together in the same place at the same time in this type of fun environment, there will be discussions. I think, a few hours of the day will be more on what to expect, but the rest of it is just going to be vibes, right? In Austin, having fun, and, hopefully getting them exposure to what the possibilities are on campus, possibilities, name, image, likeness. What are some targets or some guys you're looking at coming out of this? Because I know there's some guys you love from a recruiting standpoint. You're like, we got to have them, Steve. So Tarek, who are some of those guys for you that are attending the barbecue?
Let's remind the viewers that we're not sure at this time who all's coming and who's not. Of course, these things are always in flux.
Oh yeah,
it looks like Harold Perkins isn't going to be there as of right now, and he would be certainly a guy. So
he was number one on my list. If he was,
yeah. But since he's not going to be there, Amori Abor, he will be there. From Duncanville, 5-star edge rusher. I think he's one of those guys that if you look at Texas recruiting the past 5 years, we've had Herman had 2 number 3 classes, and he had the number 8 class. The thing is, in each of those classes, you missed on one guy that said, see, this guy, though, you have a lot of good players, but this guy's a difference maker. Abor is one of those guys in the 2022 class that's a difference maker, saying, hey, you're going to be a way different football team if you have him than if you don't have him. So now it's a long shot to get him to actually sign with Texas, but at least him coming to the barbecue shows you, okay, I'm interested. I'll hear what you have to say. Let's see how your play on the field is. Maybe I'll take an official visit. We'll go from there. That's one. Number 2, Denver Harris. He'll be there. I would say we're losing both Josh Thompson and Deshaun Jameson, and you're going to the SEC next year. You need a lockdown corner. Denver Harris, I think, is the best corner in the country. So get him there. It looks like it's an Alabama, Texas fight, and Texas needs to win this one. It's very important. Saban has enough good DBs. I know I see them drafted every NFL draft. I want some Texas DBs to be called. Earl Thomas is one of my favorite Texas players of all time. We need more of those guys on the 40 acres. So
more of those DBU guys, so we can actually get
ourselves we are DBU,
back in
just
that conversation.
You just forget that, you know, Michael Griffin, Michael Huff, all those guys were here because it's just been so long since he's had like a great DB. I thought Caden Stearns was on his way to being there, but the injuries slowed him down. So Denver Harris would be one. Another DB, Bryce Anderson. He's a Texas A&M battle. Considering that Perkins is already likely going to A&M now, Sark really needs to get Bryce Anderson because he's kind of a do-it-all DB, which is what Pete Kwiatkowski loves because he could play corner, could play kind of that rover position. I think he's a must-have. So those would be the top three. I'm forgetting who else is going to be. There's so many other. A lot of the guys that are going to be commits already.
Yep, so, commits. Also, guys in the 2023, 2024 class.
Jonte Cook. He's going to be
Jonte Cook out of DeSoto.
Yeah, he's
amazing wide receiver.
If you get him and Arch Manning, think of Tua Tagovailoa and Jerry Jeudy. That's kind of a deal there. I know people compared Xavier Worthy to Jeudy. I don't quite see that. I see him kind of as a mix. If you had to use that roster, which is a very stacked one, kind of a mix of Smitty and Waddle, I think. Probably because of the reason is Jeudy was the best route runner I've ever seen, and he was also a thicker guy, where Worthy's kind of slimmer. So he's more of those two. But those three, if you get those three to sign, you're on your way. Then you already know a bunch of other guys are coming too.
Right. You got to start that momentum. And even some of the guys like the Cam Dewberrys of the world, some of those guys in the trenches.
There you go. That was the one I was thinking about.
Okay.
I'm not sure. We're not sure if he's coming or not. He had something come up, so we'll see. But he's coming for an official visit, so that's not a make or break there. Sark definitely has to win big on the offensive line this year because the last two cycles we've missed so badly. It's crazy to think that we could have had, Bird, Foster, and the Brockermeyers, and was it Jackson that went to Ohio State?
Donovan Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, so, there you go. Yeah, you could have had all five of those guys last year, and you didn't get one. That's bad.
That 2021 cycle is an all-time bad miss, but that was Herb Hand. You know, that's how people lose their jobs. It's not, especially when you've been struggling for God knows how long. And there's a tweet that went out today to this point, because look, to what you've written about on hook'emheadlines.com, and I'll have that article posted in the description as well as the link below. And you guys chime in. I know y'all been keeping up with the barbecue list. Chime in with who you want to see or who you want to hear about post barbecue, so we can talk about more. But we expect Derek Brown and Jeremy Patton will probably both commit to Texas the day after. So good news.
And they will both be there.
Good news.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to make this point. Somebody tweeted today something I've said on this channel for a long time, but if you want to negatively recruit Texas, you tweet out Texas hasn't had a first-round pick on offense since Vince Young. Texas hasn't had a first-round offensive lineman since Mike Williams in 2002. All right, Texas has had a first-round pick since Malcolm Brown. Like, these are things, regardless of what Sark does in month one. I'm here to judge product launch, but they've got to get people to the league. Period. They've got to get people showcased. They've got to get people the foot, and it has to start now. We can't wait and say, "Oh, we hope we get Evan Stewart here. He can help fix our problems," like the Xavier Worthy thing. Like, people, I'm with you in terms of, I don't quite see Jerry Jeudy there. To me, Jerry Jeudy was one of the greatest technicians, whether it was in the slot, outside, boundary, field, whatever. he was going to put in work. I see him more of a Henry Ruggs, Deshaun Jackson, somebody that's just explosive. We've been missing that guy. So I don't care about the comps because all those people were what? First round picks. Whether it was Ruggs, whether it was, it doesn't matter. I don't care who you.
And don't sleep on Troy Murray. I think he's going to be good too.
We need him to be.
Yeah.
We need him to be. I need to hear the same buzz about Troy that I heard about him last year. I'm giving him a little bit of bandwidth because the brother is coming back from the ACL, but he's young and ACLs heal better on younger guys. But when we're talking about these Xavier Worthies, Troy Marys, Jordan Whittington finally showing, I think that he's going to stay healthy. They've got to be showcased and they've got to get developed and they've got to turn around the first round picks quickly. Because when you think people are cutthroat recruiting against in the Big 12, wait till you get to the SEC and they'll be like, dude, Vince Young, really? Were you alive when Vince Young was balling? Right? Like that's the discussions that get had. And Sark and staff and Kyle Flood and PK and Jeff Banks, well aware of it, but it's got to get fixed. So that's why I'm so happy I have you on here, because it's like, dude, we got to win now. There's no patience for 8-4s. 8-4s ain't getting anybody in the first round. I just think that's a direct correlation.
It's likely getting some people fired too. Well, not this year per se.
Not this year, right. We don't want to sound like the crazy Texas fan. You see, it's a revolving door at Austin. But I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. The momentum won't be there though.
I think that this year I don't expect a first round pick. The person I think that maybe could get it is Deshaun Jameson if he has a crazy good year, if his technique improves.
I agree with you.
I could see, because he's got the speed, and he's usually stride for stride with people, so that's probably your best bet at a first rounder. Jordan, although, no one thought Jamar Chase or Terrence Marshall were going to be the players they were. They came out of nowhere. Could Jordan Whittington be that? There you go. So, and this is something you talked about, featuring guys, getting them open, getting them the ball. That was a big critique I had of Tom Herman. Let's rewind the clock a little bit. You're talking about Casey Thompson and the Alamo Bowl.
Yes, you did a rewatch last year. Go ahead, please.
If you kept feeding the ball, because Jesse Palmer, who was the ESPN commentator at halftime, he even said, give Bijan Robinson the ball. They stopped giving him the ball like for almost an entire quarter in the second quarter. If they had just kept giving him the ball, the game would have been over before KC had to come in. That's how much they couldn't touch him. Now compare that philosophy with that of Steve Sarkisian. Sark on his play chart has a section called Feed the Studs. That means we're featuring you, you're getting the ball. And as I've been rewatching Alabama games, he keeps feeding the hot hand. When Najee Harris got hot, he kept getting the ball. When Devonta Smith, who was always hot, he kept getting the ball. Waddle kept getting the ball. Of course, when Waddle goes down, Mechie, who people thought, okay, he's a good number 3 receiver. No, Mechie showed you I can be a number 1 guy. And he's going to show
Mechie,
that.
Mechie's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, Mechie is the guy to think about with Troy Mir. Now, Troy Mir is bigger than Mechie. Mir is the size of a tight end, but he can move. So, but the way he plays receiver, the way he blocks and things like that, I would expect Sark to use that as well for using Worthy and Whittington on screens that way. So you'll definitely see that.
Did you say screens? We do that. We're going to start doing that at Texas. Screens.
You certainly we
ran them in the bowl game.
Well as you blocked them.
But we actually ran screens in the bowl game, and I think Roshan and Bijan scored.
Yes, that's my point. Yes, we would run it and stop running it. But Sark is different. He feeds the studs. Keep giving those people the ball, because eventually that's how you win. I don't think Ed Orgeron was thinking, Jamar Chase, he already caught 6 balls. We can't throw it to him anymore. No, keep giving him the ball.
Sorry, we wouldn't even have if Jamar Chase in this previous regime, especially going back to the Drew Maringer days, he would have subbed him out.
Oh, there won't be any of that anymore.
There was it was crazy. It's like, oh, it's your third series, it's your turn. Oh, it's this down, it's your turn. and you wonder why there's no rhythm being established with these guys when it's just a revolving door at the receiver position. So I'm just excited for the fact of, yeah, if Troy O'Mary's healthy, he's your guy. He's out there 90% of the snaps. We're not subbing 21 in and out, right? And
Oh, I don't think
that's
that's not gonna. I mean, the other thing on the wide receiver front, I think you probably have 4 pretty good wide receivers, and you kind of have the guys that are there. I think you have Whittington, I think, who's going to be a starter. Amiri's going to be a starter. Worthy and Dixon and Moore, those kind of the 5. But whoever the starters are, they're going to be getting 90% of the snaps, and those other guys are going to be fighting. But that's a good thing to have those guys pushing. But yeah, I think that this will work out well as far as receivers, which is what you need, because you're going to need openers. And the other thing is, we didn't use motion much last year. We didn't scheme receivers open. Sark does that very well. So
Sark
we'll
is
see a lot
a
of that.
master with, I mean, the
And throw the ball to
class.
Bijan out of the backfield. I don't know why we didn't do that more. I was like, why? He's just standing there open. Give him the ball.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but the motion element that you're talking about, especially some of the orbit motion concepts that he was doing against Ohio State, Coach Coombs was, he didn't know what hit him, right? It was master class. So that's what Texas is hiring. And if you can merge that with somebody who can just take care of the head coaching details, in-game details, because the same way we critique players for situational awareness, same way I like to critique coaches for situational awareness. And I don't think it's too much to ask for both. I want the scheme to still be fire, but I want you to know when to use your timeouts. I want you to know when we should kick a field goal and when we should be going for it. Just certain feels of the game that I think, Steve Sarkisian, I think needs to execute here at Texas. We're both very excited. I think we both have very high expectations, especially with the SEC move looming. But guys, chime in the comments. Please check out Tark's work. Please follow Tark on Twitter. Give him your handle out there, Tark.
At Real Scientistic.
At Real Scientistic on Twitter. I'll put that down so you guys can give him a follow. He's one of the best Texas follows out there. We're constantly talking Texas ball all day long, reacting to news, reacting to stories. But Tark, it was a pleasure having you on, man, and best of luck with your studies over there at College Station. I'm really, really impressed with all the work that you're doing, even outside, off from your writing and whatnot. I love them. I love collaborating with guys of many skills. So this was a lot of fun to have you on the channel tonight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Guys, I appreciate y'all. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll be back with more content. Remember, horns always up. Take care.
Welcome.